panel together. You guys do crucial work for the state. You know, I think you guys will probably hear tomorrow morning when my boss speaks to you guys. We love when you guys come into town because, you know, we don't really have any crystal balls here. You know, it's either you exist or you don't care, or, you know, we think that you don't even exist. And they have a saying in this town that, you know, if you're at the table, you want to be on the menu. So, you know, that's probably something that my boss will say tomorrow. But as many of you may know, my boss is the only Minnesotan on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, following the late Congressman Overstar's role, who also represented Minnesota State. And we were fortunate to pass the FAST Act back in December. I think the legislation partially played a key role in sort of figuring out funding, you know, because we just kept kicking the can down the road. It was 36 times. And finally passing a long-term surface transportation bill, while it wasn't a perfect bill in our mind, it gave our nation and Minnesota the stability that it needed during, you know, to be frank, during a crisis in our nation's infrastructure. But for us, the work is not done. Currently, Minnesota only gets back about 65 cents per dollar that's spent in Washington, whereas states such as California and Texas get up to 4. So, you know, I think our office is working every day to ensure that Minnesota, you know, is, you know, given more money, considering that we believe in our minds, and I think that my colleagues over here can agree. Minnesota, from a transportation perspective, is, you know, a pretty good role model for the nation as it, you know, comes with new technology, project efficiency. I know that MnDOT is working to implement new technology on construction projects. You know, I know in the old days you needed to, you know, do everything by hand and then go back to the computer and type it up, whereas now you can go on iPads and it goes right into the system, and, you know, that all plays into project of delivery and efficiency. Nonetheless, it is more than normal and exciting time for infrastructure. You know, as Crystal mentioned, the FAST Act created you know, a bunch of new freight programs, such as the Fast Lane grant that I think you know, just allows us to focus on multimodal freight programs. And, you know, my boss represents Duluth, which, as you know, is a big port town. So they deal with ports, they deal with trucks, they deal with rails that are coming down, you know, to put them on the big boats to then be shipped off. So, you know, I think that our major focus here is, you know, finding a way to, you know, work with these programs to increase rail safety, which, you know, goes along with rail congestion, which, as you know, is a big issue up in Minnesota. Also, rails literally coming off the track. Also, there are issues with rail grade crossings. There's just a train, I think it was a couple months back, that literally hit a tanker that was just sitting on the tracks. I made it up to Minnesota in March for 2 weeks, and I think, you know, and I rented a car, and as I'm inching up to a track and there are trees that are along the tracks, I'm, you know, sort of tilting my head to, you know, to even see if there's a train coming. So I think that we're looking for ways for Minnesota to obtain more funding to put, you know, lights at real great crossings or arms or both. And I thank the University of Minnesota for doing research and providing us with that information. But sort of switching gears here, when you're applying for different programs, whether it was created through MAP 21 or created through FAST, I would just encourage you to keep our office or Congressman Emmer's office or Senator Klobuchar, and keep your member, and especially us, because we're the only Minnesotan on the committee, and we can speak for the 8th, but I think that my boss takes pride in representing the state as a whole. So keeping us in the loop, and I'm sure I can speak for the DOT folks, make your case. I think that we're all sort of nervous about these unnecessary cost burdens or unnecessary delays through environmental reviews or whatever, and we're happy to help fix that. But if you make your case and really look at what the DOT is looking for in your application, then that allows us in Congress to say, hey, look, they did all the steps they need to do. And, like I said, Minnesota is a role model for the country. MnDOT has a great engineering program, and, they can do a lot of things. So if you allow MnDOT to do that, I think that is a good thing. Through my experience in learning about the process, I'm relatively new here, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions anyone may have on funding or what our office can do or what I've seen as we're on the committee. But before I turn over to questions, I think there's something that you may not forget, but whenever I meet with someone or talk with someone about it, the FAST Act increased the amount of STP funding that is sub-allocated to local areas. So if you're a county commissioner or whatever, I think we can all speak to the fact that there's no one else who understands their needs, whether it relates to transportation or infrastructure or bridges or where that money goes towards than the local governments. So I think that was a big win for Minnesota, because whenever I meet with folks, they sort of punch me in the face and say, hey, look, like, I know what's going on here. I know what we need. So I think that was pretty important. And again, I thank the Minnesota Transportation Alliance for always working so well with the local folks, and I think that's sort of a reason why you guys are around. So just to close, Minnesota's a clear leader in transportation. States should use us as a role model. Now we just have to hope that the state legislature sort of gets their act together and passes a transportation bonding bill and sort of use the money that the FAST Act created. That's kind of why we passed it. So we would like to see Minnesota do that. But thanks again for this, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, guys. Jason, legislative director for Tom Emmer, freshman from 6th Congressional District, and I see a lot of friends here. And if there's anywhere I go, whether it's Minnesota, I'm sorry, it's back home. If it's back home, Minnesota, or here, it doesn't matter who I meet with. If it's a business owner or a mayor or a county commissioner, the first thing I hear about is transportation. We need this company to come into the district. We need this company to come into our town. Or we have safety concerns or whatever else. You know, Tom was talking with some people this afternoon. I think some may be here. You know, the transportation never pulls as high as you think it's going to. Look at public polls. But when you really break it down, it's one of those top pocketbook issues that is just so important. And I think the fact that there's a lot of people here, the 45 years, and Margaret's leadership, and so many people here that I know. I just sort of want to preface my kind of remarks, I won't call them that, but how much time we spend on the Hill trying to figure out how to make this system work. And obviously how intelligent people sitting to my left are, probably the lone Republican up here. I won't put myself in that category.
I'm not
But to Denny's point, if I were on the menu, none of you could afford me. So, but the point is all I'm trying to say is just purpose of this is it really comes down to choice, right? And I teach my kids about, you know, like, well, you can have a cookie or you can go to bed. You know, I always try to pick the cookie, but usually end up going to bed. The problem is that we have choices, and in whether it's with defense or whether it's with healthcare or whether it's with education, and again, for the purposes of this conversation, transportation, we are faced with choice. And there's a couple things that I wanted to just kind of highlight. When we look at the spending for specific programs, whether it's the Highway Trust Fund or the alternatives, you're seeing an increased rate in spending in transportation alternatives, or in things that are, and I'm not going to get into too many numbers, but you're seeing things that don't necessarily raise revenue becoming more and more expensive because, again, groups like the Metropolitan Council or whoever are deciding that it's a good idea, and I'm not saying it's not, to invest in things like Southwest Corridor, you know, light red line, or the blue line, or the green line. And then what you're seeing is, so that's great, it makes the Twin Cities more livable. But if I meet with a Wright County commissioner, if I meet somebody from Candiota County, and they say, I can't get a stoplight put in. Or, my favorite, the roundabouts. I love Minnesotans and roundabouts. So, my reason for saying this is that, again, it's a choice. Is it a good choice or is it a bad choice? I don't know. But, so as we see these things, as we see revenue essentially decline, even with tax increases or whatever, but if you're in a constrained environment, you're going to have to make those tough decisions. So we can invest in light rail or in multimodal, and that's great. My boss supports it, I support it. But if we can't build roads and bridges that are actually, you know, bringing revenue in, that's a discussion that we have to have. And I think that again, so as we talk about political will, as we talk about why Congress can't, you know, why can't Congress get its act together? Well, it's like, well, do you want us to raise the gas tax $4 a gallon, you know, to pay for light rail lines and then the bridges and everything? You know, and you made a great point, Crystal, that the money that we have is not nearly as much as we want. And I thought she put that perfectly. So again, it's about choice. And so what's great is that 45 years now, the Transportation Alliance has come out here and has really made the case for transportation. We're not always going to agree on everything, but it's really great to hear how important the issue is to all of you, and whether I look at Mitch or Scott or Mike or Gina or people that I've met with all over the years, you know, you establish a relationship. You know that person. You know why that bridge is important. You know why you know the interchange on Highway 10 is important. You know why something at Wright County is important. You know why 94 is important. So, you know, there's a personal investment when it comes to transportation. And so, I think, again, so as we talk about these things, we talk about choice. And then I'll just kind of wrap everything up with, again, on the theme of choice. The Bustani bill this week, the House disapproving a $10 barrel of tax on domestic production. That would equate to about a 25 to 30 cent a gallon gas increase for the consumer. And so if you have a 10-gallon tank, it's $3 a time. If people knew what the money was going to go for in our district, in my district. If I said, hey, I'm gonna ding you $5 a time you fill up your tank, so we can pay for driverless cars and private airlines in downtown Minneapolis, I'd be looking for a new job. So the point is that there are choices, and I think the president's plans. I love the fact that he's focusing on investing in infrastructure. I think that's probably one of the best things he's done. He's really focused us as a country, and I don't think we could have gotten this bill done without the president. So, but I do think that again that should be noted. That again, when we're making choices, and also too, we can have a national policy. But again, transportation is a very personal issue, and when somebody comes to you and says, hey, we can't. I think of I don't think anybody from Anoka County is here. But when I think of Anoka County, Minnesota, you literally have a city placing a moratorium on business development. Like, think about that. 2016, a moratorium on business development because the infrastructure cannot handle more. Like, that's a problem. And so it's all well and good, but if you say, like, I've had a dozen businesses come in and say they want to grow or they want to put a facility in here, it's hard. Again, it's a personal issue. So again, as Eddie said, bad sex.
Sounds like they need more light rail.
not on Highway 10. They already have the North Star rail line, and it's personal or passenger rail. But again, this is good. Nice to bring up rail. About a year ago, I was sitting in a meeting, and they could time it. It's about 9 minutes, and this is oil coming down from the Bakken, so that slowed down a little bit. It was every 9 minutes, a train about a mile long would come through residential neighborhoods. And we have spent, as long as I've worked for Congress, trying to get money, and can't. It's really tough. And but after years of work, and we got a Tiger grant, which was great. We got some Tourist Commerce money, we got a Sims grant, got a little bit of a TEDS grant, city, county, all came together. It was kind of an all-hands-on-deck situation. And we were finally really happy to open up the new interchange on Highway 10 on Armstrong Boulevard. And a lot of people don't know about that project, how much effort that went into. That's one of the more dangerous, congested areas, kind of in the northwest metro area. It was about $40 million. Same time, about 6 months earlier, we opened up Highway 94, just northwest of Rogers, and that was about the same cost, about $40 million for just a few miles. So you see the difference, and again, it's about choice. So if you build several miles, you move a lot more people, you move a lot more freight for about $40 million, or do you spend $40 million on a much smaller project? And so again, it comes down to choice. Luckily, we got both, but it took years and years and years of advocating. I met with some people on Highway 23. I met with the 15 Coalition. Over the years, and again, it's great that you guys are here and pushing. Because as Eddie said, if we didn't know you guys cared, we don't know you exist. And so again, that's what makes what Margaret does so great, and what all of you do so great. And I just want to say thanks for everybody, and most importantly, the panel. Obviously, you see decisions are being made by some pretty smart people. So thanks for all for coming, and this is your time. So.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask if anybody has a quick question or two. Wayne.
I have a question for Dean. So Tesla Motors announced their Model 3, and the pre-orders are over 400,000 vehicles. These are vehicles that are not going to be paying into the fund through any sort of gas tax. Does ARTBA have any thoughts or ideas on how we might get ahead of this trend, or where we should go with that to try to make sure that we don't lose that potential revenue?
Yeah. So this is a issue that gets brought up a lot, and it's been brought up even before Tesla kind of made the electric car kind of sexy, if you will. But I'll say that I personally, and I think a lot of, well, I don't want to say a lot, but some experts, other folks might agree. Well, I'll just give you this stat. In 2012, less than 1/3 of 1% of the cars on the road were not gas cars. They were some sort of hybrid or electric vehicle. Right now, last year, total vehicles sold in the U.S. was over 18 million for the first time in years, first time ever maybe. So we're still talking about, so like when Tesla rolls these out in 2018, 2019, we're still talking about such a small amount of the vehicles that are on the road now or will be on the road in the next 5 to 10 years or so that aren't gas cars. The average the fuel economy standards have actually gone down in the last couple of years. When they were starting to creep up, it got above 24 miles per gallon as far as new vehicles sold. That's gone down in the last 2 years. So my point being is that right now, and this comes from, and I know you're not saying this, but this argument will come from a lot of the naysayers as to why we shouldn't talk about the gas tax or some sort of fuel-related charge. And it's basically, they say, oh, well, there's all these electric vehicles that aren't paying in the system. Well, that's literally less than 1/2 of 1% of the cars on the road. And so, yes, those cars aren't paying into, and we do need to do that. And so there are folks that, as part of the FAST Act, there was some research money, $90 million over the life of the bill that is going towards looking at alternatives to fuel tax. That I'm sure a lot of you know about, pilot programs in Oregon and elsewhere that are looking at vehicle miles traveled. So, I think we're on the right track as far as, and I would say not quickly enough, because let's say we decided, tomorrow that VMT, vehicle miles traveled, is going to be the solution. That's going to take 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, that could potentially, depending on how it looks, involve, putting some sort of transponder or something on a car, which people would freak out about, even though the technology's there to make sure the government can't tell where you're at, only sends information to the car never sends any information out. But, as well as I do, people are going to think that the government's trying to find out where they're at, even though we all carry a cell phone. But anyway, so to your point, it's not, it really isn't an issue right now, and it's not an issue for the foreseeable future. Now, in 2040, 2050, when 52 miles a gallon is the standard for every car, it's going to be mandated that every car out that has at least 52 miles a gallon, CAFE standard. So that's going to be something that is an issue, but for now it's not. But to directly answer your question, VMT, something like that is something that we support. We support looking at everything. Registration fees I've talked about is a simple way, even though that doesn't necessarily account for how much each vehicle is using the road system. But that's something that I think could get at that problem.
Anybody else? Any?
Margaret?
Yeah.
Thank you. Federal government done anything about P3 or encouraging that in the FAST Act?
I mean, the answer is yes, but I don't think there's anybody on the panel that can address that. So it's something that.
I'll see Jason later. He can help me.
I'll talk to you offline.
All right. There you go.
I mean, the TIFIA program was actually reduced, but that was done, basically in the MAP 21, the first year had $750 million for TIFIA, next year had $1 billion, and then when we extended MAP 21, there was another $1 billion. So essentially, there's a huge backlog in TIFIA funds that are available, and so they reduced in the FAST Act the TIFIA program down to, I think, $275 million in the first year. That works up to $300 million. And so that money obviously is kind of the backbone of a lot of the P3 projects, that plus the private activity bonds. We need to raise the cap on private activity bonds. We're approaching the federal cap on that, and I don't think there's a P3 project in this country that hasn't had private activity bonds or TIFIA funding or both, to be honest. And so those are the two components. But TIFIA program was in there. The experts in the P3 world think that allowing the money that was already there for the TIFIA program to be built up, so there's essentially a balance there. and then the new Tiffy money that was allocated in the FAST Act, that should, they think is the sweet spot for how much we're going to need over the next 5 years.
The only thing I'd add with respect to the ticker I'd been putting forward is the Title IX provision that created the Innovative Finance Bureau is a way to improve the process by which there really is a one-stop shopping for people who are doing those P3 projects to go from applying for the credit programs to going through the environmental review process to delivering projects, where before it was broken up into various operating configurations and various modes. So I think there's been a lot of focus on that, and a lot of work going to stand up that new organization that is coming to fruition.
Thank you.
And I'll just add that the nationally significant freight and highway grants program can be in the form of a grant or credit. So that provision is there for that discretionary grant program.
Thank you.
Any last comments, questions? Otherwise, please thank the panelists very much. It was a lot. And I know what you really want to know is where we're going to have our reception. It's just right down the hall here in the bar area. We will have hors d'oeuvres and a bar, and you can all hang out and